Okay, so for item one, I am going to want you to use as one of your supporting statements, as one of your reasons, a definition for free will that you find from a dictionary. Make sure that you're using a definition and not just a synonym from a thesaurus or a synonym mentioned in the dictionary. I also have additional requirements that you will need to meet so that when you present your definition, you present the kind of definition that a philosopher would, and such that it actually adds to the logic of your reasonings in supporting your conclusion, um, whatever your response is, whether you can take a definite stance or you cannot take a definite stance. So what you'll want to do is you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in free will. Then if you might not you might get a lot of weird stuff, so keep in mind that that's important. So you're going to do free will, and then you're going to put meaning, definition. Okay. Don't do definition philosophy or anything like that, because what I want is a lexical definition. A lexical definition is the kind that you find in dictionaries, and it captures generally the way most people use the word. And so that's the kind of definition that I want you to find, which is why I want you to use a dictionary. So I recommend that you use Google and just put in this exact thing. The definition you get will come from a Google dictionary. And so now notice that you get this one. If you want to use this definition, that is fine. So it says, the power of acting without constraint, of necessity, of fate, the ability to act on one's own discretion. So you can use that one, but you can also go and look for other ones. I don't want you to use any philosophical sources, because then it's going to get into a deep discussion, and we are going to talk about free will, but it's going to be so much to look at in terms of what philosophers have to say about it, because they actually discuss it and write pages about it. So I don't want you to do that. You could go to Merriam-Webster, so that's another approved dictionary that you can use. You can use dictionary.com. So those will be the three approved resources for getting your definition. Dictionary.com, Merriam-Webster, and doing this kind of Google search where you put the word and then definition. Keep in mind that what I say about how you go about getting your definition, that's going to apply to item 3 as well, because in item 3 I'm going to have you use definitions as part of your support to a conclusion that you are offering. Okay, so that's the initial requirements with respect to offering me a definition for whenever I ask for a definition in an argument. Now, when you are finding your definition, make sure that no version of the word that you are defining is in your definition. So if you look at this definition for free will, you will see that neither the word freedom or will is in the definition. You cannot use the words that are the term you're trying to define in the definition. In other words, you cannot use any version of the word that you're trying to define in the definition itself. As an example, let's say you said, "Hey, Dr. C, what is metaphysics? What is metaphysics?" Or no, let's put it this way. Let's say you said, "Hey, what is a metaphysician? What is a metaphysician interested in?" And I said, "Oh, a metaphysician? Oh, that's easy. They're interested in metaphysics." Does my answer help you to understand what metaphysicians are interested in? No, because my answer just includes some version of the word that I'm trying to shed light on. I use the word what? Metaphysics. So my answer presupposes that you already know what a metaphysician is interested in. So when you're looking for throughout the entire semester, in fact, you might make this a special note to use the rest of the semester. Whenever you are defining your terms in an argument or response, and it's usually good to identify a few fundamental and powerful concepts in doing so and define them, whenever you offer a definition, make sure that it does not have any version of the word that you're trying to shed light on. Okay? So there's also another requirement, and that is the definition that you're looking for, you need to keep the context in mind in terms of what is the purpose of the definition? What is the overall argument you're trying to make? What conclusion are you trying to reach? A word can have several different definitions, and each definition can have a different slant or taint. This turns out to be so true with respect to item 1 and thinking about whether or not you are wearing a mask of your own free will. Now, when I ask you to talk about free will, I'm not so much talking about, like political freedom. I'm talking about your own freedom in terms of your ability to make a choice or decision. Okay, so make sure that you are, picking a definition that is useful given the prompt, the context, the thought experiment, the reasons you yourself are offering in support of your conclusion. And finally, if you're going for that really good answer with a really good logic, that argument where you have premises, reasons that are adequately supporting your conclusion, you'll want to take some of the words from the definition and sprinkle them into the other statements that you provide in support of your conclusion. So let me give you an example here. And I'm not going to repeat all of this when you define other words for like item 3. So keep the general points that I'm making about what you do with definitions. Keep in mind the general points that I make about how you find your definition, where you can find it, what the definition should or should not consist of. And I do have one last final requirement that I'll go over at the end of this video, so stay tuned. But when I say you should, so actually, let me go ahead and give that requirement. When you are presenting your definition in your argument, it is in your argument. It's in the same paragraph as your argument. Sometimes students will state a definition and they'll put it above the argument or above the argument paragraph. In philosophy, we can offer as support a statement that presents a definition that helps the reader or the listener to understand how we define a concept leads us to our conclusion. After all, if I'm asking you whether or not you're doing something of free will, you must have a certain idea of what free will means that is leading you to that conclusion. So by stating the definition that you are using, you are making your logic, your conceptual logic, your conceptual support for your conclusion that much more obvious. So keep that in mind. Now, because you are offering a definition as a supporting statement, as a reason, you need to present it within the paragraph, as I said, but you need to also offer it in the form of a sentence. So you can't just plop down a definition above the paragraph, but you also can't just throw a definition as is within the paragraph. If you were to copy and paste this and just stick it in the paragraph, you would have a sentence fragment. If you said free will colon and then that would be considered a sentence fragment in the context of a paragraph. You would have 2 sentence fragments, and we don't want any sentence fragments. So you need a clause or a phrase that introduces the quoted definition. That brings up another point. Whenever I ask you for a definition, you are not paraphrasing, you are citing verbatim a definition that you got. So you would need to say something like, a definition for free will is, comma, and then quotation marks around the entire cited thing. Or, a definition for free will that I found, or dictionary.com defines free will as, or one definition offered by Merriam-Webster is, comma, quotation marks. So make sure that you present your definition in a sentence with an introductory clause. Make sure you put quotation marks. And then make sure that either at the end, in parentheses, you tell me which dictionary you got it from. Dictionary.com, Google Dictionary, or whatever, and include the URL. You can put the URL underneath your paragraph because the URL is going to be too distracting. So you can just put it underneath your paragraph. But do tell me in parentheses either here or use it or put the source, what your source is. Or you can mention the source at the beginning, according to dictionary.com, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just say a definition I found. Or in this argument, I will use the following definition for free will, comma, and then you could put in parentheses the name of the dictionary and the URL under that. So one last point. If you're going for a really good argument, you want really good logic, the other thing that you'll want to keep in mind is, let's say you're working with this definition. So you'll offer you're going to offer your conclusion. You might offer an initial statement supporting that, but then either your second or third statement should give the definition. It could be the second statement. Then, you're going to have at least 3 statements, right? So this would be 1. So you're going to have at least 2 other statements in support of your conclusion. You are going to want to sprinkle these words into your reasoning. So you could say, let's say you're taking a definite position. I do not think I'm doing this of my own free will because someone is forcing me. And then you can talk about this definition, and then you'll want to tie what you said about forcing to this definition. So you could say, when someone's forcing me, then I'm acting, and then maybe find a way that does not allow me to, and then maybe add this part. Okay. So, that is all I have for you. This is all the coaching I'm going to give you. I hope you find it useful and that you are able to incorporate all of this stuff into your response so that you can get a great grade and make this usable. You will be using this response for a minimum of 1 and possibly 2 future graded assignments.